He was abandoned by his mother, ignored by his father, and raised himself on a San Diego playground. He became so good at hitting a baseball that pitchers literally changed the rules of defense to stop him. It didn't work. He left baseball twice to fly fighter jets in 2 different wars, surviving a crash landing in a burning plane. He came back both times and kept hitting. He is the last man to bat 400. No one has done it in over 80 years. His name is Ted Williams, and this is the story of the greatest hitter who ever lived. Theodore Samuel Williams was born on August 30th, 1918, in San Diego, California. His parents named him Teddy after President Theodore Roosevelt, though he later changed it to Theodore on his birth certificate because he disliked the nickname. His father, Samuel Stuart Williams, was of Welsh and Irish descent. He had served in the United States Army during the Philippine-American War. He worked various jobs, including sheriff and photographer, running a small studio in downtown San Diego that catered to sailors and their companions. His mother, May Venzor, was a Mexican-American woman from El Paso, Texas, whose family had immigrated from Chihuahua, Mexico. May Williams was a woman of intense religious conviction. She devoted her life to the Salvation Army, working the streets of San Diego, collecting donations, and ministering to the poor and homeless. The newspapers called her the Angel of Tijuana after she boldly marched into a Mexican jail demanding the release of 2 young American boys. She was fearless in her faith, but her devotion came at a cost. She was gone from home constantly, sometimes all day and half the night. Young Ted and his younger brother Danny were often left to fend for themselves. Ted later recalled having to buy and cook his own meals as a child. The boys cringed whenever their mother took them to the Salvation Army street corner revivals. Ted's father eventually left the family. Ted said he understood why. His mother was married to the Salvation Army. The Williams home at 4121 Utah Street in San Diego's North Park neighborhood was not a happy place. Ted would later say he was ashamed of his upbringing, embarrassed by his mother's public religious work and his father's seedy photo studio. He rarely returned to San Diego after he became famous, but there was one thing that saved young Ted Williams from his lonely childhood: a playground 2 blocks from his house. North Park Playground became Ted Williams's sanctuary. While other kids went home for dinner, Ted stayed until dark, swinging a bat, shagging flies, playing pickup games with anyone who would join him. The playground director was a man named Rod Luscombe, a former athlete from Arizona who recognized something special in the skinny, intense boy who never wanted to leave. Luscombe encouraged Ted, worked with him, and watched in amazement as the kid's skills developed far beyond his years. When Ted was 8 years old, his uncle Saul Venzor taught him how to throw a baseball. Saul was a former semi-professional pitcher who had once faced Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and other stars in exhibition games. He saw raw talent in his nephew and became an early mentor. But it was Ted's obsession that set him apart. While other children played various sports and had multiple interests, Ted Williams had only one goal, one dream, one consuming passion. He wanted to walk down the street someday and have people say, "There goes the greatest hitter who ever lived." He carried a bat everywhere. He brought it to school, carrying it from class to class. He swung it constantly, studying his form, practicing his stroke, building the muscle memory that would one day make him legendary. At Herbert Hoover High School in San Diego, Ted became a star. He played as a pitcher initially, his arm strong enough to attract attention, but his hitting was what drew scouts from across the country. He batted an astounding .430 during his high school career, a number that seemed almost impossible. Scouts from major league teams began making regular pilgrimages to San Diego. The New York Yankees came calling, so did the St. Louis Cardinals. Bobby Doerr, who would later become Williams's teammate and lifelong friend in Boston, was playing in the Pacific Coast League at the time and recommended him to his manager. Everyone who saw Ted Williams swing a bat knew they were watching something special. But Ted's mother had concerns. She thought her son was too young to leave home, too immature to handle the pressures of professional baseball in a distant city. So when Bill Lane, the owner of the San Diego Padres of the Pacific Coast League, came to the Williams home with an offer, May agreed. Her son could play professional baseball while staying close to home. In 1936, 17-year-old Ted Williams signed his first professional contract. One detail of Ted's heritage remained hidden throughout his career. His mother's Mexican ancestry was something Ted kept secret, understanding the prejudice that existed in America, particularly in Southern California. He later wrote that if he had his mother's maiden name, he would have run into problems in those days. He did not reveal his Mexican heritage publicly until 1970, long after his playing days were over. Ted Williams's first professional season with the San Diego Padres was respectable but unspectacular. He batted .271 with no home runs, learning the Pacific Coast League's pitching while still attending high school. In 1937, he showed what he could do. His average climbed to .291, and he slugged 23 home runs with 98 runs batted in. Major League scouts took serious notice. The Boston Red Sox, through general manager Eddie Collins, secured an option to sign the young outfielder. Collins brought Williams to spring training in 1938, but the brash young Californian was deemed too raw, too undisciplined, too cocky for the major leagues. The Red Sox sent him to their Minneapolis Millers affiliate in the American Association. It was meant to be a humbling experience. Instead, Ted Williams dominated. He won the American Association Triple Crown, leading the league with a .366 batting average, 43 home runs, and 142 runs batted in. He was not just good, he was historic. The Minneapolis newspapers could not believe what they were seeing. Neither could the Red Sox. Ted Williams was ready for Boston. On April 20, 1939, Ted Williams made his major league debut against the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. He went 1 for 4 against Red Roughing, but the baseball world was about to learn what Minneapolis already knew. He hit .327 in his rookie year, with 31 home runs and 145 runs batted in. He led the American League in runs batted in. No rookie had ever led the league in runs batted in before. He finished 4th in Most Valuable Player voting, and he earned the praise of none other than Babe Ruth, who declared Williams the Rookie of the Year. From the beginning, Williams approached hitting differently than anyone before him. He studied pitchers obsessively, asking veteran teammates about every hurler in the league. He asked what Bobo Newsom threw, and what about Red Roughing and Tommy Bridges. He wanted information, and he wanted to put it to use. He also possessed physical gifts that bordered on superhuman. His eyesight was measured at 20/10, meaning he could see at 20 feet what most people could only see at 10. He could pick up the rotation on a pitch faster than any hitter alive. He claimed he could see the bat hit the ball, though he later admitted this was an exaggeration. He could feel it and know by the sensation in his hands exactly where the ball had met the bat. Williams also had remarkable hand-eye coordination and wrist speed. His swing was a thing of scientific beauty, hips rotating to generate power, hands whipping through the zone, the bat meeting the ball with devastating precision. But physical gifts alone did not make Williams great. It was his mind, his relentless study of the craft, and his absolute refusal to swing at a pitch outside the strike zone. He led the American League in walks 6 times, not because pitchers did not fear him, though they did, but because he refused to help them by chasing bad pitches. Ty Cobb once said that Williams saw more of the ball than any man alive, but demanded a perfect pitch and took too many walks. Williams did not resent the criticism. He knew Cobb was partly right, but Williams also knew something Cobb did not fully appreciate. A walk was as good as a single for getting on base, and getting on base was the whole point. But 1940 was harder. Williams hit .344, an excellent average, but his power numbers dipped and he clashed with the Boston press. He called his salary peanuts, and he said he hated Boston and its reporters. The writers struck back, calling for him to be traded. It was the beginning of a contentious relationship that would last his entire career. Williams called the Boston sports writers the Knights of the Keyboard, and they returned the animosity in full measure. They criticized his fielding, questioned his leadership, and mocked his temperament. Williams spat at fans, made obscene gestures, and once threw a bat that sailed into the stands and struck a woman. Yet for all his conflicts with the press, Williams had a soft spot for children and ordinary fans. He visited hospitals, spent time with sick kids, and supported the Jimmie Fund cancer charity throughout his life. The Ted Williams most people saw was the surly, combative slugger. The Ted Williams that children saw was patient, kind, and generous with his time. The contradiction defined him. He could be cruel and warm, petty and magnanimous, all in the same afternoon. The 1941 season would become the stuff of legend. Ted Williams entered the year determined to silence his critics. He broke a bone in his right ankle during spring training, limiting him to pinch hitting duty for the first 2 weeks. But once healthy, he began one of the greatest offensive seasons in baseball history. By mid-May, his average climbed above 400. By the All-Star break, he was hitting .406 with 16 home runs and 62 runs batted in. In the All-Star game itself, he delivered one of the most famous moments in Midsummer Classic history, hitting a 3-run walk-off home run in the 9th inning to give the American League a 7-5 victory. As summer turned to fall, Williams's average fluctuated but remained in historic territory. He was hitting .413 in mid-September before a slight slump dropped him point by point. Entering the final day of the season, a doubleheader against the Philadelphia Athletics, Williams's average stood at .399.55. Rounded up, it was 400. Red Sox manager Joe Cronin offered Williams the chance to sit out both games and preserve the milestone. Williams refused. Williams said, "If I'm going to be a .400 hitter, I want more than my toenails on the line." The night before the doubleheader, Williams couldn't sleep. He walked the streets of Philadelphia with clubhouse attendant Johnny Orlando until nearly midnight, trying to calm his nerves. He woke the next morning knowing his legacy hung in the balance. In the first game, Williams went 4 for 5. A single, another single, a home run, another single. His average climbed to .404. In the second game, he went 2 for 3, a single. A double that hit the right field wall so hard it dented a speaker. His final average, .406. No player in either major league has hit .400 since. Williams also led the majors that year in home runs with 37, runs scored with 135, walks with 147, an on-base percentage of .553, and a slugging percentage of .735. His on-base percentage that season stood as a major league record for 61 years until Barry Bonds broke it in 2002. Yet Williams finished second in MVP voting to Joe DiMaggio, whose 56-game hitting streak had captivated the nation that same summer. It was one of several MVP awards Williams felt he deserved, but did not receive. In 1942, Williams was even better in some ways. He won the American League Triple Crown, leading the league with a .356 batting average, 36 home runs, and 137 runs batted in. The award, this time to Yankees second baseman Joe Gordon, whose team had won the pennant while the Red Sox finished second. Williams was devastated. One writer had left him off the ballot entirely, a slight he never forgot. But larger concerns loomed. America was at war, and Ted Williams was about to trade his bat for a cockpit. Williams enlisted in the Navy Reserve in May 1942 and went on active duty in 1943. He trained as a naval aviator, and what the instructors discovered amazed them. The same extraordinary eyesight, reflexes, and coordination that made Williams a great hitter made him an exceptional pilot. He broke records in gunnery training, his hand-eye coordination allowing him to shred target sleeves that other pilots barely nicked. His instructors said he could make a plane and its machine guns play like a symphony orchestra. He received his Gold Naval Aviator wings and a commission as a Marine Corps second lieutenant on May 2, 1944. Williams spent most of World War II as a flight instructor at Pensacola, Florida, teaching young pilots to fly the F-4U Corsair. He was awaiting orders to join combat operations in the Pacific when the war ended. He returned to baseball in 1946, not having lost a step. Ted Williams's return season was triumphant. He batted .342 with 38 home runs and 123 runs batted in, finally winning his first MVP award. The year began with a remarkable moment. On the first pitch he saw in spring training, Williams blasted a home run as if he had never left. The 1946 All-Star Game, held at Fenway Park, became a personal showcase. Williams went 4 for 4 with 2 home runs and 5 runs batted in. His second home run came against Pittsburgh's Rip Sewell and his famous eephus pitch, a looping, high-arcing delivery that had baffled hitters for years. Williams stepped toward the pitch as it floated downward, met it with a vicious swing, and sent it into the bullpen. It was the first and only time anyone ever homered off Sewell's eephus. On June 9th, he hit what is still considered the longest home run in Fenway Park history, a blast of 502 feet that landed in the right field bleachers. The seat where it landed is still painted red today, the only red seat in a sea of green. On September 13th, Williams hit the only inside-the-park home run of his career, the lone run in a 1-0 victory that clinched the pennant for Boston. It was the Red Sox's first World Series appearance since 1918. But the Fall Classic brought heartbreak. In a pre-series exhibition game, Williams was hit on the elbow by a pitch. The injury hampered his swing throughout the 7-game series against the St. Louis Cardinals. He managed only 5 singles in 25 at-bats, batting just .200 with 1 RBI. The Cardinals employed a dramatic defensive shift against Williams, positioning 5 or 6 fielders to the right of second base. Williams stubbornly tried to pull the ball through the shift rather than going to the opposite field. St. Louis won the series in 7 games, the decisive blow coming on Enos Slaughter's famous mad dash home in the 8th inning. 50 years later, when asked what he would change about his life, Williams's answer was immediate. "I would have done better in the 1946 World Series. God, I would." It was the only World Series Ted Williams ever played in. Williams won his second Triple Crown in 1947, batting .343 with 32 home runs and 114 runs batted in. Once again, he lost the Most Valuable Player award to Joe DiMaggio, this time by a single point in the voting. Once again, a writer had left Williams off his ballot entirely. The 1949 season saw Williams win his second Most Valuable Player award, but he lost the batting title on the final day of the season by the narrowest margin in history. George Kell finished at .342.9 to Williams's .342.7, a difference of 2/10,000ths of a point. Williams went hitless in his final 4 at-bats. One more hit would have given him the title and what would have been his third Triple Crown. The Red Sox also lost the pennant that day, falling to the Yankees by 1 game. Then came Korea. In January 1952, Ted Williams received news that shocked him. The Marines were recalling him to active duty for the Korean War. He had not flown a military aircraft in nearly 8 years. He was 33 years old, in the prime of his baseball career. Williams was bitter about the recall. He had believed he had an informal agreement with the Marines that his World War II service was sufficient. But he never publicly complained, and he refused offers to spend the war playing on a service baseball team. He relearned to fly, this time mastering the F-9F Panther jet fighter. In February 1953, Captain Ted Williams arrived in Korea as a member of Marine Fighter Squadron 311, Marine Aircraft Group 33. His wingman on many missions was a fellow pilot named John Glenn, the future astronaut and senator. On February 16, 1953, Williams flew his first combat mission, a strike against a tank and infantry training facility south of Pyongyang. His plane was hit by enemy fire. He was hit again on subsequent missions. On February 19th, Williams's plane took a devastating hit from anti-aircraft fire during a mission over Kiyomipo. The aircraft caught fire, the hydraulic system failed. He could not lower his landing gear or flaps. Standard protocol called for ejection, but Williams feared that bailing out would destroy his knees and end his baseball career. He nursed the burning aircraft back toward friendly territory, guided by his wingman who flew alongside, giving hand signals because Williams's radio was out. Williams' belly landed the Panther at over 200 miles per hour. The aircraft sliding nearly 2,000 feet down the runway before he could escape. He leaped from the burning wreckage moments before it could explode. The next day, he was back in the air. Williams flew 39 combat missions in Korea, was hit by enemy fire 3 times, and earned the AIR medal with 2 gold stars. He developed pneumonia and an inner ear infection that finally grounded him in June 1953. Glenn later said that, much as he appreciated baseball, Ted would always be a Marine fighter pilot to him. He said that Williams did a great job as a pilot. When Williams returned to the Red Sox in August 1953, he homered in his first at-bat. The crowd went wild, but Williams, as always, refused to tip his cap. The years after Korea saw Williams continue to defy age and expectation. In 1957, at 38 years old, he batted .388, the highest average in baseball that year and the highest by any player since his own .406 in 1941. Only a slight slump in the final weeks kept him from another run at 400. In 1958, he won his 6th and final batting title at .328. He was 40 years old, the oldest batting champion in baseball history. Williams remained dangerous into his final seasons, despite injuries and advancing age. In 1960, after hitting just .254 in an injury-plagued 1959 season, management urged him to retire. Too proud to end on a down note, he returned for 1 more year. He hit .316 with 29 home runs. He was 42 years old. On September 28, 1960, a grey, gloomy Wednesday afternoon at Fenway Park, the Red Sox were playing the Baltimore Orioles in what would be Ted Williams's final home game. Only 10,454 fans showed up to say goodbye. Before the game, there were brief ceremonies, a Paul Revere Silver Bowl, and speeches from the mayor and broadcaster Kurt Gowdy. Williams, still bitter about his treatment by the press, could not resist a jab at the writers who had tormented him for 2 decades. Williams said in spite of all the terrible things that had been said about him by the knights of the keyboard up there, he would like to forget them, but he could not. The game itself was unremarkable until the 8th inning. Williams had walked and flied out in his previous at-bats. Now he stepped to the plate against Baltimore pitcher Jack Fisher for what everyone sensed might be his final swing. The count went to 1-1. Fisher threw a fastball. Williams swung. The ball rocketed into the right field bullpen, a towering drive that sent the small crowd into ecstasy. Williams circled the bases with his head down, crossed home plate, and disappeared into the dugout. The fans stood and cheered, begging him to come out for a curtain call. His teammates pushed him toward the dugout steps. But Ted Williams would not tip his cap. He would not acknowledge the cheers. He sat on the bench, put on his jacket, and refused to emerge. 3 weeks later, a young novelist named John Updike, who had been in the stands that day, published an essay in The New Yorker that would become the most famous piece of sports writing ever produced. He titled it, "Hub Fans Bid Kid Adieu." Updike understood Williams's refusal to tip his cap, to acknowledge the crowd one final time. Gods, Updike wrote, do not answer letters. Williams's 521st home run left him 3rd on the all-time list at the time of his retirement. His career batting average of .344 remains the highest of any player with 500 or more home runs. His career on-base percentage of .482 is the highest in baseball history, still unbroken. In 1970, Ted Williams published The Science of Hitting with co-author John Underwood. It became the definitive text on batting. a book still studied by players and coaches more than 50 years later. Williams divided the strike zone into 77 cells, each the size of a baseball. He mapped his expected batting average for each location. In his happy zone, belt high over the heart of the plate, he could hit 400. On the low outside corner, he would be lucky to hit 230. His philosophy was simple but profound. Get a good ball to hit. Be patient. Know the strike zone. Don't chase pitches outside your wheelhouse. Discipline, not aggression, was the key to hitting. Williams's approach influenced generations of hitters. It also influenced investors. Warren Buffett frequently cites Williams's strike zone philosophy as a model for making investment decisions. Wait for the pitch in your sweet spot. Don't swing at everything that comes your way. Ted Williams was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame on July 25, 1966, his first year of eligibility. He received 93.4% of the vote. His induction speech was brief, just 7 paragraphs, but it contained a passage that would prove historic. Williams said that baseball gives every American boy a chance to excel, not just to be as good as someone else, but to be better. This is the nature of man and the name of the game. He added that he hoped the names of Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson could be added as a symbol of the great Negro players who were not here only because they were not given a chance. In 1966, no player from the Negro Leagues had been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Williams, who had competed against Negro League stars in barnstorming games during his playing days, was calling for recognition of players denied the chance to prove themselves in the major leagues because of the color of their skin. No one had prompted him. No one had suggested the idea. It came from Williams himself. 5 years later, Satchel Paige became the first Negro League player inducted into the Hall of Fame. Josh Gibson followed in 1972. Today, there are 37 people associated with the Negro Leagues enshrined in Cooperstown. Williams's daughter Claudia later said it was the accomplishment that made her most proud of her father, more than any batting title or home run. After his playing career, Williams managed the Washington Senators from 1969 to 1972, and he stayed with the team when it moved and became the Texas Rangers. He won Manager of the Year in 1969 after leading the expansion Senators to their only winning season in Washington. But his managerial career was otherwise undistinguished. He retreated to Florida, pursuing his other great passion, fishing. Williams became one of the finest fly fishermen in America, inducted into the International Game Fish Association Hall of Fame. He spent summers fishing the Miramichi River in New Brunswick, Canada, and he wrote a book on fishing to go with his book on hitting. In 1991, on the 50th anniversary of his .406 season, the Red Sox hosted Ted Williams Day at Fenway Park. Frail and emotional, the 72-year-old Williams stood at home plate, pulled a Red Sox cap from his jacket, and tipped it to the crowd. It was the first time he had acknowledged Boston's fans since his earliest days as a player. The crowd wept. So did Ted. Williams suffered several strokes in his later years and required a pacemaker. He underwent open heart surgery in January 2001. On July 5, 2002, Theodore Samuel Williams died of cardiac arrest at age 83. What followed was a family tragedy that dominated headlines for months. Williams's son, John Henry, arranged for his father's body to be cryonically preserved at a facility in Arizona, despite claims from Williams's oldest daughter that Ted had wanted to be cremated. A bitter legal battle ensued before being settled out of court. It was an undignified end for a man who had lived with such fierce dignity. But the controversy over his remains cannot diminish what Ted Williams accomplished in life. Ted Williams lost nearly 5 full seasons to military service in 2 wars. He played his entire career in Fenway Park, where the distant right field fence made it harder for left-handed pull hitters to accumulate home runs. He faced the Williams shift for over a decade, defenses stacked against him in ways no other hitter had ever experienced. And still he compiled numbers that astound. He finished with a .344 lifetime batting average, 521 home runs, and a .482 on-base percentage that remains the highest in history. His 1.116 OPS ranks second all-time, behind only Babe Ruth. 2 Triple Crowns, 2 Most Valuable Player awards, 6 batting titles, 19 All-Star selections. He was the last man to hit 400. He homered in his final at-bat. He flew 39 combat missions in Korea and walked away from a burning jet. He advocated for Negro League players when no one else would. He wrote the definitive book on hitting. Ted Williams was difficult. He was stubborn. He feuded with writers and sometimes with fans. He refused to tip his cap, even when they begged him to acknowledge their love, but he was exactly what he wanted to be. When he walked down the street, people said, "There goes the greatest hitter who ever lived." And they were right. Like and subscribe for more baseball documentaries. Until next time.